Hi everybody, my name is Kenneth and I'm here with Henry Cumming, who is a medium and a equine healer.
Yep.
And Henry has done has an extensive experience, shall we say, with mediumship. He works at the College of Psychic Studies, of which I'm a big fan of, and also works internationally. So, Henry, welcome.
Thank you very much. It's really, really good to be here, actually. And like anything, as I like free falling with this kind of work, and I think this conversation is going to get quite interesting. I have a funny feeling there.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people struggle with the concept, the whole spiritual work of the Lightwork road, as it were, and I think they have a romantic notion of just going off to a cave or a desert and meditating in silence in nature. Actually, to be honest, the light worker today has to be able to find that in this metropolis, for example. It has to be found in London, one of the zillions of places that we operate and live.
Yeah.
And I always bring that up in my class, actually. I always stress how important that is, to be able to find that peace, that quiet that we all so desperately need to do in order to be able to function properly.
Yeah, I think it's something very practical. It's almost even like, I've been thinking about spiritual entrepreneurship recently, and just to talk about it a bit more. Because I've been doing all this stuff with YouTube and trying to make a living out of it, and PayPal and donations, and trying to blend that with a spiritual life as well. And that's something that it's almost as if it's the new model. It's like the new model is integration with society, not, like you say, going out to a mountain, meditating or doing energy work on the planet or something. I mean, you can do that right here.
It's balance.
Yeah.
And I don't think spirit expects us. And obviously we are spirit anyway, but I don't think that lovely consciousness that we love and know as spirit, I don't think they expect us to live like monks. I don't think they expect us to, not drink, not have fun, be vegetarians or whatever it may be, whatever people's concept of being a light worker is. I've always felt, as you know, I've been aware and very conscious of spirit since I was very, very small. And I was raised in a good old-fashioned Scottish family. My parents both lived and worked in London, but both their sets of families, as it were up in Scotland on the East Coast. And my mother's family in particular was the place that we spent most of my time when we were on holidays and things. And it's a big farm in Scotland which had cattle.
You don't have a Scottish accent, though?
No, I went to school in London, you see, because my parents are working in London. So I was schooled in London. But the farm itself was a proper working Scottish farm. Cattle, arable, had shooting, fishing, all that sort of stuff. Everything that I suppose you'd imagine a landowner to enjoy. And so I was raised in that kind of environment. And I think from a very early age I realised that it's important, firstly, to be grounded, secondly, to be real. Because, as I said, I don't think, and I'm not saying that it's not everybody's path, and there are people out there who do live a monk-like existence, and that's how they feel they can best serve mankind. And it's a wonderful thing. And it's and some people might deem it as a sacrifice, others deem it as a necessity. I definitely feel, I think the line that I seem to be coming in on is the fact that I am a meat eater. I do drink, not very often, albeit. But, I'm real, as in I like to feel that I'm practical, very down to earth.
Yeah.
And real. I'm living life. I have the same issues that everyone else has. Every month you worry a little bit about money, for example. How are you going to pay the mortgage? How are you going to pay this bill? How am I going to afford this? All the real concerns that everyone else has.
Yeah.
And it's going back to what you were saying. It's so important. I think the biggest challenge we have in life is to achieve that balance. it's to try and embrace as much of what we are as possible as light workers, as spirit, which is what we are, and combining it with this rather challenging life that we all live here on the earth plane. I think it's probably one of the hardest places to exist as a spirit. I really do feel that.
Yeah, I think it's
it's the
an advanced
coarsest. It's one of the coarsest of places I think we can probably exist, isn't it? It's very coarse. It's quite rough on us.
Very dense.
It's very heavy and very challenging, generally speaking. And I don't think it's that balance, isn't it? If we go 100% light worker and we focus everything on our light work, everything we know, we eat, breathe, sleep, light work, we lose sight of why we're actually here.
Yeah, disconnected.
And to be honest, it's very disorientating. It's very ungrounding. And you might as well not be here. And I think the reason why we're here is to be as much of as the light work as we possibly can.
Yeah.
But in the same breath, we still have to pay our bills. We still have to have relationships. We still have to have our family life.
Yeah.
We still have to, I suppose, deal with the consequences of our actions. All of those factors are so vitally important for us now at the moment, and never more so than now.
And also, I wanted to say it helps your light work because people can relate to you.
Yeah.
Because you've gone through the experiences that they've had. And, it's not like you're coming from the outside, you're coming from the inside.
Yeah.
That's very important to have that rapport with your audience, whoever it is that you're imparting your light to.
I think the way forward, I think light workers over the centuries, I mean, they've been around for as long as they've been around for centuries and centuries and centuries, thousands of years.
Millennia, yeah.
And I think in the past, I think light workers, mediums, healers, prophets, whatever you want to call them, seers, I think they've had this stigma attached to them that actually a lot of the time they're unapproachable.
This is
because they're sort of
big mystical.
Absolutely, it's the whole, as I like to put it, I'm not trying to cheapen it at all. I'm not trying to demean it in any way whatsoever. But it is very smoke and mirrors. It has been over the years, and I know some light workers have thrived with that because it gives them a sense of power, a bit more power, where they've possibly gone slightly over the wrong side of the fence, as it were, with the work, and the others that. For example, a classic example, not trying to be controversial, but Jesus Christ, for example. Christians have their beliefs and understandings of who that man was and who they felt he was and how he served us and how he lived his life. But there are lots of different sides to a story. And I think at the end of the day, with light work as it is now, it has to be palatable, it has to be real. Because it's what we all are. I think the smoke and mirrors have to be removed. I think the whole us and them and the elitist aspect of it has to be removed. Because actually, the media, for example, highlights certain people that are deemed experts or these extraordinary people that do these extraordinary things, and actually, they're just a handful of tens of thousands of people who are just as capable of doing that as they are.
And this diversity is really important. Like, we can't only look to, like, Deepak Chopra, Eckhart Tolle and all that. There's entire fields that are being kind of they're bashing through the forest, It's like, we got to really appreciate that diversity. And, there's so many directions this can go in. I mean, like, on YouTube, where you guys are watching this right now, this is on YouTube, and I've been thinking about YouTube a lot recently.
It's huge.
It's just democratized.
It's amazing.
TV.
Yeah, it's incredible. But I also feel, I think the likes of YouTube and just social media, and I think going forwards, I think things like television, for example, terrestrial television, I think it's going to get phased out. I really do. I think viral is going to come in, for example. But I think it's very much a case of, in the years that I've spent with the light work that I do as a medium and a healer, I'll give you an example. The first time I was invited into a private trance circle, And that was interesting. And I'd heard about trance, didn't know much about it. And I ended up doing it for a couple of years. And I remember the first evening I went along, and I was the new boy, as it were, and there were 5 people in the circle. And
how long ago was this?
This would have been about 4 years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago.
Not too long ago, actually.
Yeah. And it was just, I was quite nervous, to be honest. I didn't really know what to expect. And this circle had been running for about 2 years anyway. And I was kind of the new one in invitation only, as it were. It was all very sort of, very special. I felt very sort of, very lucky. I was really. And sitting there in this dark room, in this private house with a cabinet, and each of us, were going into a meditation, each of us going into the cabinet, and we put the intention up there of who we wish to come forward in order to give us either teachings or guidance or advice or just wish to make an observation. And I was expecting quite complicated, quite intellectual banter, as it were, from spirit. And the thing that really, really got me, and I think it's something that is definitely resident in this work, is the simplicity by which they come through with.
Yeah.
I remember sitting and watching one of the people go into trance, and all they spoke about for about 45 minutes was the fact that they started off saying that we are so... We focus all our efforts. When it rains, we just think about the rain. We think about the raindrops. Now, this being that was coming through was talking about, have you ever focused on the spaces between the raindrops? And it went on for about 45 minutes, and I can't honestly remember what he said, but it was quite extraordinary. And as you know, with that kind of work, it goes straight into your heart anyway. You can really feel it, sort of soul to soul. But the thing that really got me was the simplicity by which spirit was communicating with us. It wasn't complicated, and it was very much a case of, gosh, why didn't I think of that? But of course we don't, because we're too wrapped up in our own importance, self-importance, and worried about life and living life and stuff. And actually, the lovely thing about it is, it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
It's very straightforward, it's very simple. It's all about love.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, isn't it?
I'm just reminded of the Abraham Hicks material and the Seth material. I mean, it's the same thing. They spoke in simple English.
Yeah. Which is what it's all about. It's a very simple line, really. I think at the end of the day, and from my understanding anyway, I think it's about love. I mean, some people don't get confused. They think it's all about unconditional love. That's what we are. That's what we are as spirits, for unconditional love. But I think we come here in this world, in this existence on Earth, to learn about personal love, to learn about loss, to experience emotions, to experience anger and hatred and racism and all the other things that tend to smack us around the face as we march on through life. And I think, as I said, going back to what we were saying earlier, it's getting that balance.
Yeah.
It's taking the rough with the smooth. It's trying to put as much light into life as possible while still remaining very grounded, very real about life. I really do.
And that's actually a really kind of important... I mean, for me, that moment was going to the College of Psychic Studies. I mean, I was like a second-year undergraduate at Imperial College. Yeah. And I was kind of like, I guess I had my scientific hat on. And I was like, is this really real? Come on, guys, seriously. And I think I can't remember who was the medium, but it was an open reading. And I looked at all these people, and he was giving this information to people, and the people were like reacting, like they were all like taking it in as a matter of fact. But I could see that kind of, when someone says something to you, you respond, your body language can't lie. And I was thinking, okay, so either like, the whole thing is a sham, the whole thing is a fake. All these guys are actors. The entire building is in the act. Yeah. It's a total scam. I paid £5 to see this thing, and they're probably fleecing some people in the audience. Or psychic ability is real. And it's like, where do you go? And then after that, I had a psychic reading myself. And the psychic, told me things about myself, which there was this resonance, you know, and like they were telling me really, really specific things, you know, this to the same level as you, and I was like, you know, I mean, this is clearly real. This is real. This is real. And then you, not only that, you start to realize how many lies there are out there in the world about this kind of stuff.
Charlatans. It's a wonderful word, isn't it?
Well, I want to say more about the scientific establishment. It's like in the education system, they present you with this Newtonian view of the world, and it's the mind. Don't go into the mind in terms of joining. You can examine the mind in terms of yourself. Yeah, your psyche, what's happening inside of you, but they don't ever talk about the minds being joined. You know, which is something that
they always refer to them as individual minds.
Exactly.
And actually, it's a collective consciousness, isn't it?
100%. Which is the paradigm which a lot of people already have, but there's this line, you see, between the way people think about minds in two camps. I just think it was extraordinary. And I mean, after that, you realize, like, wow, like, the entire scientific establishment is wrong. They're never going to snap out of it unless they choose, because it's a choice. It's a choice whether to accept or to be open to these kind of things.
Absolutely. And I'm the first one to say be skeptical, be critical. I think it's important to be discerning. And I think it was one of the well-known lamas would say, actually, I expect you to examine what I tell you. I don't expect you just to follow it because I said so.
Yes.
I want you to actually rationalise it. I want you to be comfortable with it. I want you to sit with it. I want you to feel it. And if it doesn't feel right, don't accept it. And I think that's what life's all about. You know, the work that I do, as you know, as a medium and as a healer, it's, you know, with mediumship, for example, I mean, it's very easy to, as you said, the gathering you described, to be in a room full of people. And I can understand the first time you've ever been exposed to anything like this, you go in and you're thinking, gosh, what is going on here? It's all a bit weird. You know, slightly dim room, and people are paying a $5 on the door, and there's some person up the front sort of bringing in through, you know, your dead great aunt or whatever. And it's, I can understand why some people think strange, weird, a bit odd. But actually, mediumship, when you do that, it's very easy to say, I've got your grandfather here. And you look at somebody who's in their 60s, there's every chance that their parents are probably going to be in spirit. So you can probably say, right, I've got your dad here or your mum here, and what she's saying is blah, 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 blah. You know, you've got a 50-50 chance that you're right. But a good medium will say, actually, I've got your grandmother here. I do feel she's on your mum's side of the family by getting the name of this. I'm getting this age that she passed at, and this is the illness that she had before she passed. And she lived in this part of the country, and this is what she did for a job, and this is how many children she had. That's
level of specificity.
So I think if you're going to do mediumship, you've got to go absolutely all out.
Yeah.
Because, as I said, you know, you can sit there and say, right, I've got your father here. Yeah. As I said, you know, if that person's 80, there's every chance his father's in spirit. But if you can say, right, I've got your father here, I've got the name of David, and I feel that he passed at the age of 86, and I feel it was 2 heart attacks that he had, but actually it was cancer that took him across, blah, 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 and a cancer of this particular part of his body. This is what he did for a living, and this is where he lived, and this is how many children he had, and so on and so forth. You paint a picture of that person because that's important.
Yeah.
Because you present that evidence that tells that person that you have their father, and then you're reliant in it, that you're then passing on some upliftment, some message of love, or just a nice bit of encouragement, or whatever it may be. And often that's all it requires.
Yeah. And also, I mean, a lot of the good mediums and psychics that I see, they will never ask for, they will never want the client to feed them information, because you know, there is this kind of, am I co-reading the client? Am I, you know, there's this kind of like, maybe you don't want to contaminate the psychic from your ego, what you think this person, you know, imagination, what this person might have been, or you know, his circumstances.
It's a very, it's funny really. When I was growing up, I was aware quite early on that I was never going to be a conventional soul, really, as a person, a conventional person, really. And I've never liked anything that's too easy. And mediumship, for example, is a very controversial subject. And don't get me wrong, there are people out there that cold read and they're extremely good at it.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, in one part I will disagree with the fact that they shouldn't be there, and it's very unfair, and they're probably fleecing somebody for quite a lot of money.
And they give the industry a bad name.
Absolutely. But there's also a flip side to anything, really. For whatever reason, they're probably got their market, as it were, and they're probably helping a certain demographic, for example. But in the same breath, I don't think it's right that people should, I think whether it's with mediumship, whether it's with a service that you provide, whether it's something that you're selling, whether it's something that you're giving, I think it's wrong at the outset to rip people off.
Well, I
just don't think
exactly.
That's right. It's what I'm trying to say in a roundabout sort of way.
Sure.
But there are some people out there who really, really believe in what they do. Me for starters. I mean, I could be, working in a very serious chefing job at the moment, getting national recognition, as it were, as a chef, if I wanted to be, or if I chose to have gone down that road. But actually, I felt the calling for the work that I do now much stronger than any other kind of work that I could possibly do. And when somebody comes to see you, and you've never met them before, and they sit down like you are now, sit down on the sofa, and I tune in, and I bring through a daughter who drowned last year at the age of 15 on a family holiday in the south of France, in the pool that was attached to their villa. And I don't know this about this person, and it all comes in very clearly, and you watch that release, and the sadness, and the eyes well up, and the heart opening. I know it seems some people might deem it almost as if I'm preying on somebody. I'm not at all, because she wouldn't have come to me in the first place if she felt like that anyway. But she's healing. I'm healing that person. I'm helping with the healing process.
Yeah.
I'm a cog in the system. I'm a cog in that whole healing process. And it might be just the thing that she needs to come to see me.
Yeah.
I need to connect with her daughter, who died last year in that family holiday, to describe who she is, maybe her name, where they were, what she did, and lots of other relevant information that only maybe mum knows about.
Yeah.
To confirm to her that her daughter is still around.
Yeah.
Is still there.
Yeah.
Gives an awful lot of relief and peace and understanding to somebody's passing.
Well, it's actually a very interesting point, because I'm only starting to begin to see the therapeutic effect of proof of survival. Because I've always looked at the spiritualist movement, and I'm thinking, what? Just to prove the existence of survival after death? I'm like, what about more? Like, what about the cosmology? Exactly, it's just scratching the surface. But at that time, it was, because all of this fear around death, it's something that's still very, very real for 99% of the people on this
planet. People are terrified of dying.
Yeah.
The bulk of humanity is scared of death. And I feel, in my understanding, that death is probably the hardest thing for us to get our head around. It's probably one of the top, if not the top fear that humanity
public
has.
Speaking.
Yeah, absolutely. Public speaking always puts the fear of God out. Most people doesn't. But the concept of the fact that we are going to die one day really does intimidate and really scares people.
Yeah.
And I'm of the understanding that if we can get past that fear of dying, we can really start living. We can really feel excited about what we have now.
Yeah.
And the people around us, the people that we love, the relationships that we're in, the friendships we have, the work that we do, the countries and the parts of the world that we go to visit, all of a sudden it starts to make a lot more sense. And actually, death is just a transition.
Yeah.
It's another beginning.
Yeah.
we're just going into another existence. That's my understanding of it.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, I was terrified of dying when I was small. I was really genuinely scared of it, thinking, I used to wake up in cold sweats thinking, gosh, one day I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when I'm going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Could die next week.
Mm-hmm.
Could die in 50 years' time. I have no idea. But every time I would see these people walking around in spirit thinking, gosh, when I do die, am I going to be walking around like this? What kind of a life is that? But actually, if we can get past that fear of dying, that fear of death,
Mm-hmm.
people can really live. And it's, as I said, the mediumship side of things is just scratching the surface. It's also revealing and, in a very small way, encompassing what it is that we are and what we're all about. And it's just proving to people, actually, to be honest, we don't die. We never die.
Mm-hmm.
We're like an ever-ready battery. We just go on and on and on and on.
I just want to allay some of the fears that some people possibly might have with this kind of like, okay, you're seeing dead people.
Mm.
So what happens to us when we die, and how do we avoid kind of floating around in the ether?
The bulk of people that die, when, we're born, we live our life, and at some stage in that life, we die physically.
Mm-hmm.
When we physically die, depending on how we go, and this is obviously this is my understanding of how it works. If we have something that's deemed a natural death, as it were, so for example, we get to be 89 years old and we're getting a bit creaky and a bit old, and we may be an ex-smoker or something, so our lungs are a bit knackered and our heart's a bit tired and our joints are a bit creaky, and we're just slowly getting old, and that lovely effects that that age has on us. And we go to bed one night and we don't wake up. Our heart decides to just stop. Generally speaking, in that kind of environment, our spirit will leave the body and it will cross over what I would refer to as the veil.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going from this consciousness, so from this state, into a non-physical state.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say it's almost like it's like a parallel life, really, to the life that we're living, only that there's nothing physical about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's all energy. So our spirit is like a ball of energy that comes out of our body and crosses over into the veil. Now, what tends to happen is we are helped across by either members of our family or our dear friends who have gone before us.
Mm-hmm.
And they are aware of when we're going to be coming home, as it were. And I refer to spirit as home. I don't refer to here as home.
Mm.
This isn't home.
The spiritual people beings having a human existence.
This is us. This is us playing a part in a play, really.
Mm.
That's the way I look at it. And Shakespeare got it right.
Mm.
But we go home when we die, as it were, and that's where we make that transition from a physical life into a spiritual life. So we go back into an energetic field. And the bulk of us will be met by a loved one, by a member of our family, usually a parent, a mother, a father, a grandmother, a grandfather, or a sibling will help us across into that existence. That's my understanding of it. Now, there seems to be a transition then where, depending on what kind of a life you've had, you will receive healing, the spirit will receive healing, and they'll repair, they'll patch you up, basically, because actually being a spirit in this physical existence is very hard wearing on the spirit. It's very abusive on the spirit. It's very tough on it. So when we go across, the first thing that happens is we are given healing for as long as we need. And then it's my understanding that when we're ready, we have that opportunity then to review the life that we've just had.
Wow.
So I don't feel that we're judged by anyone or anything. I really don't feel that. Now, I'm sorry if there's some people there who are devout Christians or very religious people. I really don't feel that there's any one being that sits there and judges us. I really don't think that. I feel that we are the best judges of ourselves.
Exactly. If there's anybody that judges, it's us.
I think we're given all the help that we need as well. And I don't understand that some people will say, I don't understand why a God, inverted commas, and I don't see God necessarily as an individual with a beard and a nightie sitting up in the clouds, not to try and demean him at all. God is an essence, it's an energy that we're all part of, and I feel that we're all just little slivers of that energy anyway. I don't feel that there's one big being judging us. I really don't. And why would a God dish out love unconditionally to us through our physical life, only to snatch it back once we die? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It defies any rhyme or reason there.
Yeah.
So my understanding is once we've had that opportunity and that we've acknowledged the fact that we've actually passed from a physical existence into the spiritual plane, that's when we can actually sit down and have a look at our life. So Kenneth can have a look at his life, and Henry can have a look at his life and think, right, okay. And it's all reminded. We're reminded of the life that we signed up for. So somebody or something has said, right, Kenneth, you remember, before you went down on this life, you said that you wanted to experience this, 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 and this, and you wanted to go through that, and you wanted to see this and do that, and blah, blah, blah. Because of you wanted to learn this lesson, this lesson, this lesson, and so on and so forth. This is putting it very basically. You then think, absolutely. And it all comes back, it all flows back to you. You think, right, okay, I'm going to look at my life that I just lived. Did I achieve that? Did I learn the lessons that I wanted to learn? Did that make any sense? I learnt that lesson, definitely, because they presented that twice in that lifetime, and I reacted exactly how I should have done, which was good. So that lesson was acknowledged and learnt. Now that one kept coming back every other week, and I didn't seem to learn my lesson there, and I still haven't, but I now see it. So maybe then, after, because also, as my understanding is, when we go across into that spiritual plane, the only place that time exists is here. The only time that time is linear is on the earth plane, where we have our minutes, our hours, our weeks, our months, our years.
So it happens instantaneously, really.
Absolutely.
From our point of view.
I feel, to be honest, that actually this is all coexisting. All of it, all at the same time.
Wow.
So we might refer to having past lives and stuff like that.
Yeah, time is just an illusion, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think possibly we're living that at the same time, perhaps. Maybe we are. I mean, gosh, if I knew all the answers, I wouldn't be sitting here today. Probably up there somewhere, as it were. But it's funny because I think the wonderful thing, the moment you scrape off the surface and you get a bit curious and you start your own development, spiritually speaking, and you consciously want to develop as a medium, as a healer, and working on certain modalities to develop those sides of you, it just starts to come up, doesn't it? You just think, wow, that's amazing. And you start sort of answering all these questions. You think, gosh, that's interesting. So if it's like that, what happens when that happens? And of course, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. So then after that, do we then construct almost like we're planning a mission like to go down again and to learn certain things and to gather some pearls.
Yeah, when you do a mission, like a military mission, you go in to do a particular job, don't you?
Yeah.
And I think that's what it's like with our life, really. I think we think, as a spirit, think, gosh, I really want to go and learn what it's like to be hated, or I want to experience racism, for example, or something like that. So we'll incarnate into physical body, which will put us in that best possible situation. So, whatever it may be. So you have that life where you are experiencing extreme racism or hatred or unconditional love or whatever it may be. And I think that's something that you discuss. I do feel that there is some kind of a hierarchy, definitely, in spirit. I definitely feel that there are some very senior beings. Are we playing? Recording?
Yeah. Just checking. Yeah, just want to double check.
I do feel that there is a pecking order, as it were, with beings. I do feel the likes of Christ and energies like that are right at the top of the tree. I really do. And I'm not saying that because I'm not about Christian or anything like that, but I do feel that we've got that sort of energy top of the tree, and then we're kind of coming all the way down, all the different consciousness.
Where is the angelic kingdom in that?
I would say it's probably, if we're looking at say we're at the bottom of the tree and we're looking at the top, and say you've got God inverted commas and the Holy Trinity, as it were, as I suppose a lot of people would understand it as, would be at the top of the tree. I'd say the angelic kingdom is good 3/4 of the way up the tree.
Right.
To put it roughly, does that make sense to you?
Well, I mean, there's so many theories.
There's so many theories.
Bailey,
yeah, absolutely. But in the same breath, I think there is a relevance in it. But in the same breath, I think it's irrelevant as well. I think because that's what we're all about anyway. It's what we choose that we wish to come through as. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think as a raw spirit, as it were, as that essence of that consciousness that pops into this physical body that brings us down here into this existence, I think we can probably go anywhere we want. I think we have access to the whole of that if we so desire.
Now, Henry, I want to bring it to the practical now, because we're going to the last kind of 20-25 minutes, 30 minutes of our interview. This is to address, you out there who are listening and maybe want to investigate this or already on this path. What can we do to facilitate this? And what kind of advice would you give to someone who's starting out in this exploration?
First things first, don't have any expectations. I think to approach anything like this with a very open mind, I think it's very healthy to have doubts about it as well. But healthy doubts. I think doubts, if you have extreme doubts, it can obviously have an adverse effect on things right across the board, whether it's this work or whatever you're talking about. Is to be very open-minded to it, but also to be accepting the fact that this is what we are. Now, some people will be very open to what it is that you'd like to explore, what it is that you want to find out about spirit and what you are as a spirit, and this kind of work, development side of things, the mediumship, the healing. There will be people out there who are really, really anti it. And I do feel a lot of that will be brought about by fear or just a non-understanding of it. And of course, if we don't understand something, we tend to fear it, don't we? Or we're wary of it. If there's something that feels quite poignant or quite prominent or quite strong, but we don't necessarily know what it is, there is a natural feeling to feel threatened by it, or maybe fearful of it. And actually, the more people uncover it and unfold, the more they realise that actually it's fueled by love. Not trying to sound cheesy or anything at all. We operate our fuel, cars run on unleaded and diesel, we run on love. At the bottom, that's the bottom line, really, with it all. But when it comes to the development side of things, is not to put yourself in a box. I think people almost like to model themselves, and it's a natural human trait as well, on certain people that inspire them. Yeah. So, for example, in my field, obviously I'm into the mediumship side, there's some amazing mediums out there. One of them in particular, Gordon Smith. He's a fabulous medium. I mean, he's a really, really good medium. He's very humble. He's extremely good at connecting, and that's all he does. He doesn't do predictions, he doesn't do life guidance, he does mediumship. He proves that life exists after physical death. That's his role in life. He's not there to convert people, he's just there as a messenger, basically. And he's a very, very special soul. And some people will try and model themselves on him, for example. So they'll try, even down to the point they'll use his mannerisms when he's on platform. Now, as I understand it, the reason why we all have different coloured skin, we come from different backgrounds, we come into this in different ages, we exist in different countries, is the fact that actually we all need to be unique in our own way. And Spirit has made us like that. The more variety there is amongst light workers, the more people we can touch and we can reach.
Diversity, it's part of nature.
If we all look the same, and we all work the same, and we all worked identically to each other, we're going to reach a handful of people. But the fact of the matter is, all I understand is that we come into this work when Spirit feel that we should be coming into this work. Now, I do feel some of us come into it very, very early on in our life. Some of us come into it, comparatively speaking, quite late into our lives. Now, in order to be successful or to be useful as a light worker, we have to have had some kind of experience beforehand to inspire and to fuel that particular department, inverted commas, that we're going to be working in. So whether it be grief counselling, whether it's mediumship, whether it's healing, whether we suddenly find that actually we attract all recovering alcoholics, one person attracts recovering alcoholics to help to heal that you find out actually they were an alcoholic once upon a time, but they've kicked it, as it were, and they're helping others to do the same. People who are helping drug addicts, they may have been ex-drug addicts as well. So we all have our role to play in life. Now, some of us, I think, and again, it's a human trait, feel that we need to exist in a much greater, much grander scale. And actually, to be honest, some of the people, or the bulk of the people that make the most amount of difference are the people that just work their little corner, work their patch. Because at the end of the day, it's not about the individual. It's about being a collective. And it's going back to that whole business as we were talking earlier, that it's not individual minds, it's a collective mind.
Yeah.
We're all connected, we're all joined, we're all the universal consciousness, we're all part of each other. And I think that's where some people get unstuck.
It does take a large... It's almost like there's a need to be spiritually grounded in the sense of, a lot of the work that this area, mediumship, psychic ability, trance, can be very technical. But the intention is, why are you doing it? What is your paradigm? And like you're saying, if we don't have that intention of selfless service to serve the whole, and nothing to do with any individual, any country, any whatever, just to serve spirit, then we know we're in a good grounding, and whatever technical ability that we have can be utilized for the purpose.
I totally agree. And I think once people... I think the light workers that shine are those that are definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, in service to mankind, to humanity. I really do feel that. And unfortunately, because as I said, it's all going back to balance again, but you get some of these extraordinary souls that have gone before us. You've got sort of Christ, Muhammad, you've got the likes of Gandhi, you've got the likes of, you've got all sorts of people in all sorts of walks of life. People like John Lennon, for example. I also feel, they're all light workers in their own way, getting their message across. And often there are people out there that do not want to hear it. And unfortunately, John Lennon gets shot by somebody because probably they disagree with what he had to say. And
it's probably it's a good way of telling if you're doing good work, how much resistance you get sometimes.
Martin Luther King, incredible. He was an absolute visionary, wasn't he? But unfortunately, somebody decided, actually, no, I think you're a threat, because actually what you're saying deep down actually makes perfect sense, and it is the truth. And I don't like that, because it's going to topple everything that I stand for, and I can't have that happen. So I'm going to make sure that you get silenced permanently. And often that works that way. And, you hear about that wonderful expression about witch hunts, even from small communities hundreds of years ago. You've got the wise lady at the edge of the village who makes all the herbs and potions and speaks a lot of wisdom and speaks a lot of sense. But maybe one day something that she says is actually very threatening to the landowner or the king. And all of a sudden, she's dangerous, or he's dangerous. And it's a fear again that mankind seems to fuel. Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense. I'm just getting this... it's almost as if the humanity is one organism, isn't it? And we are one mind, and it's like there is part of us which is unconscious, and part of us which is conscious. And very often, what the conscious is experiencing brings up a lot of fear in unconscious. Absolutely. So on a collective level, you could see this reaction as this play between consciousness and unconsciousness.
It's fascinating.
It is fascinating, yeah.
And ever since I can remember, I always used to love being left in the car if Mum went off shopping. In the car, we parked and locked, and we sit there just watching people go backwards and forwards, and just watching how people interact, how people react to situations, how people are with each other. It's absolutely fascinating to watch. And again, it's souls trying to adjust to this rather strange change, this strange existence that they have to go through and experience. But some of them don't even realise they've signed up for it. And they're wandering around some city centre in Dundee, say, thinking, what am I doing here? My father's an alcoholic, my mother's a drug user, my brother ran away from home when he was 13, I skipped school for the last 5 years, and what am I actually doing here? And actually you find out somebody like that ends up being a huge inspiration one day, because they've had to have gone through all of that to make them, or to give them the tools in the toolbox to be able to help people like they were when they were growing up.
Yeah.
And we all, as I said, if we were all the same, we'd be very limited as to who we could help. But the fact of the matter is we're all different. And that's what I would say to people who are looking to develop as mediums, as healers, is to remain as individual as you possibly can as a person, but obviously think collectively, because you are just a cog in the grand mechanism of what this is all about. But yeah, don't have any expectations. Give selflessly. Be happy, enjoy life, help where you feel inspired to help, and really just make the most of what you have. But the development side of things, life is one big development circle. That's the way I look at it.
Would you encourage people to go to like the spiritualist churches? And
yeah, it's. I mean, you'll hear a lot of the old school mediums, as it were, saying that is your training ground. Going to spiritualist churches all over the country, all over the world, going to spiritualist centres and doing demonstrations or teaching, because you're meeting lots of different types of people. And as you can appreciate, in a city like London, for example, the demographics are amazing. You know, you go from one church in West London to one in East End, and one in North West London, and one in South London. You've got completely different people attending these churches, so you're reaching different demographics of people. And again, that little message, I'm just trying to think of one at the moment. I went to a church in North London, in Finchley, up that neck of the woods, up around Finchley area. And there was a guy there who'd been dragged along by his girlfriend. And you could see he was kicking and screaming. I spoke to him afterwards. He wasn't happy. She was obviously very keen on the whole spiritual thing and mediums, and I think she'd watched some of these television mediums on the box and stuff, and got quite inspired. And I was doing a demonstration that evening, and he came along. He was quite reluctant, but the interesting thing was, I came to him, not to her. And I brought through his best friend who'd died in a car accident 3 weeks before. I gave him his name, the age he died at, the colour of his car. I think I gave some of his registration. I think I told him who was in the car with him. Told him what kind of what the weather was like the night he died, where it was. All that sort of stuff. Really precise, because I was being shown it by his friend. And he really needed it, because he was genuinely, seriously stuck in life.
Wow.
He was stunned. He just lost his best friend in a car accident. His best mate, the guy
And he wasn't expecting to get any message from him.
No. I think he was quite scared, to be honest. But he came up to me afterwards. He said, "It's not scary at all." I said, "No, it isn't, is it?" I said, "I wouldn't do it if it was scary. Why would I want to get involved in something that's scary? Let's be honest. I wouldn't want to play on somebody's heart. I wouldn't want to put somebody on the spot and rip their heart out in public. I would never do that. I would never ever want to do that. I can only do this work on a vibration of love. I can only do this with love." And the message probably lasted 5 or 6 minutes. And on the end of it, the message he gave them was amazing, to the point that this guy was 20, 21, broke down in tears, in a good way. And I saw him afterwards. He came up and he wanted to give me a hug. I was fine with that. I love a good hug. And he just said, "Thank you so much." He said, "I was so lost." He said, "It was my best friend." And I said, "That's good. Now you can get on with your life now." He said, "Yeah, I can. And I'm going to go to college," because he dropped out of college because his friend had died. And he's a very bright boy. And he's about to throw it all away. And his friend came through just to say, "Don't dream of dropping out of college. Don't be silly. You've worked really hard to get there. Just because I died, yes, it's a terrible thing. It's sad. And I'm not going to see you in a physical form the rest of your life. But please don't blow your life up." And he's gone off. He's doing a degree. And, his life would be amazing.
Yeah.
And to be able to facilitate that Firstly, I feel incredibly privileged. I really do genuinely feel massively privileged to be able to do this. But also, it's so humbling. But it's the core essence of what we are. We're in service to each other. We're all love. We're all to help each other. You know, it's a team effort here.
Yeah.
On the earth plane.
Now, the other thing I wanted to ask you about is healing. And I know you do equine healing. And, well, I mean, the entire work is healing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just healing in different modalities.
Healing, yeah.
But tell us about this direct healing that you do, or this healing work that you do.
Something that I think I've been doing, or I know I've been doing, for as long as I can remember, but something that I've consciously been doing for probably the last 10 years. Something I've always had a very strong connection with is the animal kingdom, and in horses and dogs in particular, but any kind of animal really. Snakes, chickens, hamsters, gerbils, guinea pigs, dogs, cats, pigs, you know, you name it, horses, birds of prey. It doesn't really bother me, really. I mean, I look at it as just another soul, another spirit we're helping here. But I realise that, firstly, I can get a sense of what's going on with that animal when I meet it. And secondly, when I put my hands on an animal, healing happens. And often a very physical form of healing as well.
Wow.
So not only are we, you know, as you can understand, with healing it works with the mind, body and spirit, which is what we're all comprised of. Often with, for example, a classic example, a dog might be emotionally challenged. Dogs, generally speaking, or animals as a whole, are all about unconditional love. Classic example, you can have a dog, you can work 18 hours a day, you can work really, really hard, you can have mood swings, you can get angry, you can get upset, you can be inconsistent, you can be rubbish with getting back to your friends. But every time you come home to that dog, tail's always wagging, it's always pleased to see you. That's unconditional love. There's no judgment. There's absolutely no judgment there at all.
So that's what they're trying to learn.
They are bringing unconditional love to us. They are reminding us of what we're all about. Because when we're here as souls, we get all this stuff loaded up onto our shoulders. We're loaded up with, you know, the way we've been raised. We've had other people's belief patterns and systems piled on top of us as we're growing up. Their understandings. Religion might be a very major influence in a lot of people's lives. Maybe the way you're brought up, strict, disciplined, lax, casual, whatever. It's all factors that actually go into hiding what we are. And animals, no judgment. So, on the grand scheme of things, when I go to heal an animal, the first thing that I realise with them is, firstly, you know, I'm clearing it with them. I'm saying, look, you know, I'm come here to give you a hand here. And it's like telepathy, really, that you're speaking with them. And when I
do you know what they're saying to you?
You get a very strong sense. Sometimes it can get quite clear as to what they're trying to tell you. But often, like this, it's just the way I work. I mean, we all work differently. And obviously, I always joke about the fact that we work for the same company, but we all work in different departments.
Sure.
And the way I operate is, I mean, they show me imagery, and I'm a very visual person, I'm very creative. So I will, for example, if I'm connecting with a horse for the first time, you know, when the horse actually lets me in, as it were, I might get a sense, images in my head of maybe where that horse lives, or the kind of life that horse has had, or maybe some influencing factors in that horse's life that have maybe worked adversely. And it'll start to paint a picture as to why this horse is needing my help. And it might be very much on a physical level, it might be on emotional, it might be on all of the above. And to be able to connect with an animal, to lay my hands on an animal, you can actually feel the physical healing actually happening. The point where you can actually physically see things moving and adjusting and changing.
Within the space of a few minutes?
Absolutely.
Wow.
To a horse changing its entire attitude. where you've managed to communicate, you're connecting with it, and you get a really strong sense as to who or what that animal needs. Yeah, no, people will give me a book and say, look, you've got to read this, it's amazing. And a lot of the time, it's not because I don't want to read it. Sometimes I just, intuitively just feel maybe not my cup of tea. I might be lying in bed one night and think, well, I'll give that a whirl, let's have a look. Start the first few pages and think, God, this is boring. Or, yes, I know this already. Or, yeah, this is my understanding anyway. So how's this going to kind of open my eyes a little bit more? Mm-hmm. And a lot of, it's not an arrogance either. It's far from it. I think we're all, I feel that we all come down, and those of us are very conscious of our lives, and those of us that aren't. I do feel that we're a bit like a new computer. You go to a computer shop and you buy a brand new computer, it's got that hard drive and the software and everything built in. And I feel that we come down with that. And when something resonates with us, it's because it's what we're all about, or what we understand, or what we understand to be right. If it doesn't resonate, it's either not right for us, or it's not meant for us. Does that make sense? And that's what makes us individual as people and as spirits. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so important to be individual. That's why it's so important to be, I think, just aware of how we feel and how we feel in certain situations and certain environments, and whether or not certain belief systems that are maybe being imposed upon us by either our peers, family, friends, whatever, whether that sits comfortably with us. And I think a lot of people do struggle with it, in that I think there's an element of don't want to let people down, don't want to upset people, don't just anything for an easy life, you know what I mean? So they just kind of go with it, really. So they'll go along with in a particular religious vein, for example, that maybe that's a family religious vein, or a belief system or an understanding of what life's all about, and not really venture outside of that, because it's much easier that they don't, to be honest, because it'll go against the grain, it might upset a few people, and it make their life a little bit harder. And I think it's people with a bit of a character and end up doing this kind of work pretty much full on, the light workers, because I think light workers don't like injustice. They don't like things that don't possess any kind of truth. They only kind of resonate with stuff that comes from a place of love, or comes from a place of good. And it's important that those of us who do feel so strongly about our views need to actually, I'm not talking about going outside with a placard or a loud halo and saying, I believe in this, this, and this, and this, but also just, it's what people don't understand is, I think a lot of people are scared away from this work because they feel as your role as a light worker is to go on the stage.
Let's define that in your terms. What is a light worker?
A light worker, in my understanding, is somebody who has decided to expand their own consciousness, so explore their own consciousness really, and start to ask questions about, I suppose, about matters beyond our understanding as a human. So there are a lot of people in this life who come into life, they're born, they go to school, they meet their sweet childhood sweetheart, they get married, they become a plumber, they're a plumber for 40 years, they retire, they go to the pub every Tuesday, Thursday and Saturday night, and that's their life, and that's their life. And they have a couple of children, they raise the children go to the school they went to, they still live in the same town, and they live a very normal kind of existence really, and they're happy, and that's obviously what they want to do. I feel that a light worker is somebody who is not necessarily happy with that kind of an existence, because I think they feel that their calling is much stronger than that of a regular, normal, run-of-the-mill type of life. I think they feel that there is more to life than that, and there's more to being here than just living. Does that make sense? And the light worker, as my understanding goes, is somebody who is actually bringing light to the situation. So somebody who is helping. I told you, it's quite noisy there, isn't it? I'll let them go. quite noisy. It can get quite hectic around here with cars and things, but as I was saying to you at the beginning, I think it's important to be able to find that peace and resolve within this kind of situation, and if you can do it anywhere. But a light worker is somebody here who is raising people's own awareness of what we are and who we are and why we're here, and I suppose quite like the fact that we're a collective. We're not individuals necessarily, although a lot of people feel that we are. That we're one big family, and that actually we have a duty and a role, and we come through because we've chosen to come through as light workers in this lifetime to be almost like shepherds to sheep. And again, this is not meant to sound arrogant at all. It's not, because there are hundreds of thousands of people like me in the world and like you, and we all have our little role to play. And I often feel, and I think a lot of people get scared away by that definition of light work because they think it involves maybe standing up on television or on a big stage in front of hundreds of people and speaking your truth. Mm-hmm. And actually, light workers work in all sorts of departments, as you know. Light workers can work very quietly behind the scenes without any kind of public awareness, without any kind of media awareness. Just somebody who every Tuesday night will take a few people in for a bit of healing in some little village in the back end of Suffolk or something. Light workers work in varying degrees in different ways, and I feel it's bringing in the light.
And what do you think, to you, is there a connection there with extraterrestrial souls, that kind of thing? Or do you think we're all extraterrestrials in that sense?
I think we're all... I think there are lots of different civilizations going on as we speak and working in different vibrations. And I tend to look at universal consciousness as what we all are and what we're a part of. Almost like a giant radio transmitter and receiver. And depending on how tuned in we are, depends on what frequency we can go to. And I think depending on the frequency depends on where we are existing in the grand scheme of things. That's how I understand it to be. And I couldn't tell you whether or not for a fact that, extraterrestrials are out there. I think it would be an incredibly arrogant remark to think that there aren't. I think there's no reason why there shouldn't be. And I think there's been evidence spanning back to ancient Egypt to 2,000, 2,500 years ago, where you've got images on tombs, on temples, of objects flying around the sky.
And written about in the ancient texts.
Absolutely. So, answering your question, I think we exist in all sorts of different ways. And I think the extraterrestrial thing is just one part of it.
Yeah.
I think they are probably much more learned than we are. I think they're much more advanced spiritually than we are. I think they just exist in a very different way. And I think, to be honest, on an earth level, I think we live quite basically. I think we're quite coarse in the grand scheme of things. I think this is, in my understanding, is I feel that where we are living at the moment on Earth is probably one of the lowest, roughest vibrations that a soul could reside in. I really do feel that. And I think from here on, it's the only way is up, really. And again, to these other civilizations that exist in other star constellations and other galaxies, I really do feel that. Why not? It's such a big place.
I want to bring it back to healing. And we were talking before the camera was rolling about how you approach your healing. Could you just repeat that for us? How do you approach healing a client? What do you do? What goes on during the process?
When somebody comes to see me in a healing capacity, often they don't fully know why they're here. They may have been referred to me by somebody, a friend of theirs, or somebody that's been to see me already, or been to see another healer, and kind of figured maybe this is what I need. So a lot of the time people they often think they know what they need, but when they sit down in front of you, healing is really, in my understanding, is really getting to the crux of it. It's getting to the absolute essence of what that person's about and why they're reacting in the way that they are, whether it's physically, emotionally, or mentally. And a good healer should be able to go straight in there and understand why they are the way they are. So the healing side of things, I mean, the way I tend to work, I'm a hands-on healer, but I can work hands-off as well. I mean, some people don't like having hands put on them. Some people like it if they just lie there and you have hands off. But personally speaking, people know me for my hands-on healing, and that's both for humans and for animals. Now, obviously, before I start a healing, what I've done before that person's even walked into the room, I've tuned in, as it were, I've connected, I've consciously plugged myself in, as it were, into the healing energy, the healing vibration. So I've meditated, I've just sat quietly for a few moments and just gathered my thoughts and cleared my head and cleared my mind and got myself in that very peaceful space. I then put an intention up there, and I do feel that it's important to ask for what it is that you need. And I always ask for the highest and greatest good to work through me. So that way I know in my heart of hearts that only the best kind of energy, as it were, is going to come in. I also ask for, and this is something I was taught by a lady who was responsible for a lot of my development. She would always say, can I ask for the best you've got, preferably a miracle? And I always say that, and sometimes you can almost hear spirit chuckling sometimes, but I think it's so important to ask for what it is that you need. And if that's the sole intent of this healing, then let it begin, And then once we've kind of put the intentions up there, I've connected, it's a very simple case of maybe it might be appropriate to have spoken. I generally speak to the person beforehand, find out what's going on with them, maybe even ask them a direct question, why are you here? And they might say, well, I really hurt my back last year, I had a car accident, and I've had an operation, but my back's always been stiff and I've always been a bit funny and I have loss of feeling in my right side from time to time, or my neck's hurting or my head's hurt or whatever it may be, or it could be that I've just got a broken heart and I need a bit of a pep, I need a bit of a boost. And as you know, it works with the mind, the body and the spirit. So from that perspective, I just get a sense of what we're dealing with here, and in the same breath, because I'm connected into source, as I like to refer to it as, I'll get a very strong sense as to why they're here as well. So if it correlates, their story correlates to mine, that's cool, I'll go with it. If it doesn't, I'll tell them what I feel is going on as well. And usually you find a middle ground, something that they're comfortable with, and then the healing has already begun before they've even walked in the room.
Yeah. So they telling you about a specific problem helps you hone into what needs to be done, but at the same time, even if they didn't tell you, you could just allow spirit to do whatever it needs.
Generally speaking, it doesn't happen 100% of the time, but a lot of the time I will get a sense of, if it's a physical ailment, I will probably get drawn to exactly where the problem is, and maybe even get a very, very strong sense as to what the problem is, so how it was caused or how it came about. And then as a conduit for spirit, I'm either laying my hands on or having them just off the body, and the healing energy will flow through me into that person, and healing will take place. Now, the outcome of the healing is not up to me, and I make that very, very clear with people. I don't feel that anybody has the right to say, I can cure you. You have people who say, I work a lot with people with cancer, for example, but I also seem to have a lot of people who have very bad necks and backs and joints and knees and hips and all sorts of weird and wacky ailments and problems and issues. And I don't think anyone is in their right to say that we can cure you. All I can say is, look, I can certainly instigate the healing, but the outcome of the healing, as to whether or not you do get better or not, that's not up to me. That's up to a much greater power.
Right.
That's going to...
and also the person, whether or not he wants to.
Absolutely. That really helps as well. But often, as you can appreciate with healing, it's not just about me giving healing to somebody else, it's somebody giving themselves permission to receive healing. But also, in a lot of cases, that person giving themselves permission to release something they're hanging on to. It might be grief, it might be anger, it might be sadness, that will actually be making them physically ill, be manifesting in a physical way. And often, for example, I feel that things like cancer, for example, can certainly be inspired to grow in somebody's body by their state of mind, for example. I think if there's somebody that's holding on to a huge amount of anger or pain for an extended period of time, and we're talking years here, I do feel over time that energy that's locked into that body can certainly manifest into something physical. I really do feel that.
Yeah.
If you have that kind of energy in your body resident, it's got to manifest somehow physically, hasn't it? If it's there for a decent length of time, it's got to. It can't not. And often when people have cancer, for example, I think a lot of the time there is a reason for it.
Well, would you say that's the basis for all disease?
I totally agree.
Yeah,
absolutely. I really do. I think, there's some very unfortunate instances where people do contract a disease, not for any other reason other than the fact that they just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, as it were. And it might be something that's resident on something that's come into contact with their mouth or with their blood or whatever it may be, their saliva. But I do feel that a huge chunk of people who are suffering physically and emotionally it's a direct result of their mind, their mental process, their emotion.
Well, even if you were at a certain place at a certain time, you were the person who instigated to be there at that certain place.
Absolutely. And I think we hang on to too many of our emotions. It's got to manifest somehow.
Yeah. Now, the question obviously begs to be asked, if it's spirit doing the healing, then why do I need to go to you for healing? Why can't I just do it on my own?
You can if you know how to. And I think it's something that's very easily disbelieved. I think it's something that everyone should be aware of. I do feel that we all have the potential to be able to heal and to be healed and to heal ourselves and self-heal. I mean, that's one of the first disciplines you learn if you, for example, take up a healing course, in this country or anywhere really. You take up a healing course, they'll cover that aspect. It's the self-healing, because you can't really heal others unless you've got yourself sorted out in the first place. And that's one of the first disciplines that people will be taught or to be shown and to understand before they continue to heal other people. It's understand how to heal yourself. Mm-hmm. And answering your question, there's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't heal yourself. But the reason why people come to see me is a lot of them can't heal themselves. Mm. A lot of them are so wrapped up in their own lives, their own issues, that it doesn't even occur to them. And actually often it's much easier for them to come and see somebody like me, because it's impartial, there's no judgment, and I just take them as I see them, clear it, heal it, move on.
And many times it's also very symbolic, isn't it? It's almost as if we can't accept ourselves as... we feel like we're not good enough, or we're not worthy enough of this healing, so we have to look to somebody out there who will help us. And it doesn't matter if it's a professional healer or not, but somehow that projection is enough. And maybe, there's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, obviously we want to move to this model of self-reliance about well-being.
And that's another role for the Lightworker, is to raise awareness for people to actually realise that actually they can do it themselves. But the fact of the matter is, the reason why there are so many of us about and open and people come to see us is that there are a lot of people out there that don't know how to go about it. And that's, as I said, it's one of the roles of a Lightworker, is to show them the right direction, as it were, which way to go, how to go about it. And again, it's all about selfless acts of love, really, and it's not something that should have a price on it necessarily. I'm not talking about charging here or anything like that. It shouldn't be accounted for in that respect. It should be something that's given very liberally, just very happily handed across to somebody. And if somebody is keen to know how to heal or maybe interested in mediumship or how to understand how to ground or protect, I'm very happy to hand over what I know. It really, providing I know that it's going to be used for good. There shouldn't be any kind of, conditions attached to it, really. I think it's something, because it's what we are, it's what we're all about. Yeah. Some of us are more enlightened than others in that respect, and we're not saying that again in any kind of arrogant way. It's very much, it's a fact, really. Some of us are a lot more conscious of what it's all about than others. Yeah. And it's up to us then to help them. There's a wonderful expression, and I know you're an ex-military man, you can only go as fast as your slowest man. Yeah. And as we go as a collective through life, it's our role to help the slow ones, to come up to speed and to keep up with us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the chain is only as strong as the weakest link.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you appreciate that.
How do you practice spirituality?
Probably not as much as I'm sure. I don't know. I mean, that's a very interesting question. I mean, I'm a firm believer, and I think people have wrestling matches when they get into the spiritual work. I certainly have with me in the early phases of my development. You go through periods where you give up alcohol, or you give up smoking, or you give up meat, or you give up eating fish. You do meditation 2 hours a day and all that sort of stuff. And you go through all these phases, and really, as I was saying earlier, we're all different. We all react differently. We all behave differently. And we're all, individuals in that respect. And I think it's whatever sits comfortably with you. If it feels right. Mentioned earlier, and I asked you, do you eat meat, do you eat fish, and everything? You say you eat everything. I do as well. I love a glass of red wine from time to time. I love a whiskey with a log fire. And as I said, going back to what I was saying earlier, I think it's important to live. It's important to experience life. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with becoming a monk and living on, raw vegetables and water for the rest of your life and not eating meat or fish. That's somebody else's choice. And that's whatever resonates with them. Mm. So, answering your question, I have had wrestling matches with it, and I think a lot of people do, thinking, gosh, should I give up meat? Would it make my work clearer? Would it make it sharper? Mm. Would it make it easier? Mm. If I stopped eating red meat, if I stopped eating chicken, if I stopped eating fish, do I go vegan? Do I go vegetarian? Do I cut out booze altogether? Do I take up cigarettes? Do I give up cigarettes? It's that, I think everyone has that question, and I think at the end of the day, it's whatever suits you.
Yeah.
Whatever works for you.
Yeah.
There's some amazing mediums out there that drink and smoke. And they eat big, fat, juicy steaks. There are other people out there just as good in the way of mediums. There are vegans, don't drink, don't smoke, and they live a very sort of almost like a monk-like existence.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I think it's whatever resonates with you.
We shouldn't confuse the form and the content, because obviously the form can differ tremendously. I mean, I have this body, maybe I can't drink milk, but maybe you can. So, but obviously we got to be guided by, again, the intent, to allow spirit to tell us whatever it is that we need to shape our form. Now, I wanted to ask you about psychic ability as well. I think this is probably one of the last kind of themes we're going to go into it. How do you see psychic ability being different from mediumship? Are they different?
Psychic ability is something that everyone has. I don't feel that everybody has a mediumistic ability, but I do feel everyone has a psychic ability. Because that one of the expression is every medium can say they're psychic, but not every psychic say they're a medium. And that's not being elitist, that's not bringing the smoke and mirrors effect at all. As I said, we all need to work in different ways in order to reach as many people as possible. Psychic ability, I would say, is another label for our sixth sense. So we have our basic 5 senses, and psychic ability is our sixth sense. So it's our clairsentience, clairvoyance, clairaudience. So it's all the senses that we use when we're doing spiritual work. So when we're either healing, healing is an umbrella title, but whether it's, say, for example, we're doing mediumistic work, we're using all these different senses in order to be able to paint a picture of what it is that we're receiving in the way of a download.
Is that intuition as well?
Yes, absolutely. Intuition is another word for psychic ability. I do feel that. And everybody has the psychic ability. I really do believe that. But as I said, again, in varying degrees. There are some people that have a very basic ability, and that basic ability can be something as little as, I've got a funny feeling about that. And that's about as far as they can go, and that's about as much as they can elaborate, right up to somebody who says, I've got a funny feeling because I know X, Y, and Z is going to happen, and I know this person's going to come in, and I know this name's going to come in from out of nowhere, and I know this is going to happen. And it's very precise and very detailed, and I would say that's a very enhanced psychic ability.
Yeah.
A mediumistic ability is somebody who has very strong psychic abilities, but has just taken it just that little bit further, has been given an extra string in the guitar, as it were, and that extra string is enabling them to be able to communicate and to be able to link in with the essences or the consciousness of those who've gone before us, so the people that have physically died here on this earth plane.
Mm-hmm.
Does that explain it correctly? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of mediums out there, a lot of psychics out there. And again, they all work in very, very different ways. And obviously then, to confuse it even more, mediums work in different ways as well. Some are clairaudient, so they won't see anything or feel anything, they'll just hear it. Some are very, very feeling about it, so they'll get clairsentient, so they'll just feel, they'll describe what they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Some will be clairvoyant, so they'll be very, very visual with what they get. Others will have all of those senses.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we have to work in different ways to reach different people, because it's a bit like me saying that you like every single type of cuisine in the world. You won't though, will you? There'll be certain foodstuffs, I'm sure, or food types that you just don't resonate with you. And it's exactly the same with mediums and light workers.
Yeah.
And I always say to people, when they come to see me, if they've lost somebody that they love, maybe a sibling or a member of their family or a friend who's gone across the spirit, and they come to see me in the hope that that person's going to come in and we can communicate. Sometimes it doesn't work. And I'll say to them, I said, look, the way to look at it is, would your brother hang out with me in real life? No, he probably wouldn't. So the chances are he probably won't come down through me today, because he won't resonate with my energy. But touch wood, luckily, I've got a good hit rate in that respect. If there's somebody there, there's a very, very good chance they'll want to come in and communicate, because what I try and do is get Henry out of the way as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm literally an open channel for them to be able to pop in.
Yeah.
And I just get the judgment, that I get completely impartial with it.
Yeah.
And be as accommodating as possible energetically to enable that person to feel comfortable enough to come in to talk to their loved one.
Mm. Well, it's a very interesting area, because then we've been focusing on dead people. What about spirit guides? What about extraterrestrial beings? There's a whole plethora of beings out there, isn't there? So is that mediumship as well? What is that? Is that channeling?
Well, mediumship is a human term, really. I think it's just another label, and as humans, we just like to label things. And in life, and certainly in this work, I think it's impossible to be able to label everything. As human beings, we just have to feel that we have to give something a name, or we have to put it in a particular pigeonhole, or a particular box, or a particular department, a particular section, a particular paragraph. And actually, at the end of the day, mediumship is just a word that's been given and associated with the ability to be able to communicate with people who pass the spirit. But also mediums work with guides. We all work with guides, and you can be a psychic and work with guides, and not necessarily with people who are dead, as it were. So it varies, really. I think at the end of the day, the more conscious you are of connecting with spirit and with source, it'll increase your chances of being able to connect to the whole of the picture. I think the more you do it and the more you go into it, I think the more that they let you see. So you might initially be born a natural medium or a very, very strong psychic abilities, and then they suddenly transform into mediumistic abilities. And then actually you start to explore it even more and get a bit deeper and start to meditate a bit better and maybe lighten up on your diet, and you start to really focus on what you're doing. And all of a sudden you're having direct conversations with guides and masters and teachers in spirit. So nothing to do with your family at all, just beings that have come in to help. And then you can go in even deeper and deeper and deeper. And I know there are lots of people out there that is their sole focus in life, is to go in as deep as they possibly can. And at some stage, I'm sure you get stopped. Because maybe actually you can't go any further than this. That's not your chosen path. That's not where you're meant to be going. This is the level that you're meant to be working on. We don't want you to go over onto that line, because that's not what you signed up for. And I think there is some kind of a hierarchy behind the scenes, but not in a sense that we don't stand in this existence.
Yeah, because that's pretty much.
Because we're all together. We're all a collective. So from that perspective, I think they're just certain lines that we won't cross or don't wish to cross.
Yeah.
It's I think it's absolutely fascinating. I could talk about it all day, all week.
Likewise. Henry, we're just going to start to wrap this thing up. any kind of last things you'd like to mention to our viewers? How can people get in touch with you? Consultations, prices?
Yes. If you want to get in touch with me, you want to come and have a consultation, you want a healing or a mediumship session or maybe a life guidance session, you can just look me up on www.henrycumming.com, and that's Cumming, C-U-M-M-I-N-G, www.henrycumming.com, and it's got all the details on there that you will need to get in touch with me. But apart from that, really, I've really enjoyed this chat. It's been really, really lovely to meet you.
Yes, likewise.
To see you.
And I'm sure we'll do more work together.
Definitely, absolutely.
So thanks for watching. If you've got more comments, do leave them on the comments box. I will provide Henry's website and links below. So thanks for watching. I'm Kenneth, and I'm with Henry Cumming. Bye for now.